Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon and warm welcome to all participants joining us today, both those present in person at the seminar room and those connecting with us online via Zoom meeting. My name is Naifataya and it's my honor to serve you as Master of Ceremonies for today's event. We are gathered this afternoon for the SAPPD ITB webinar of 20 and 26, hosted by Regional and Rural Planning Research Group titled Infrastructure Megaprojects, Urban Corridor and Regional Transformation. Before we begin, allow me to kindly draw your attention to a few housekeeping matters. All participants are requested to mute their microphones unless invited to speak. Questions and comments might be submitted through the online session or Zoom Q&As and will be directed during the dedicated discussion session by the moderator. We kindly ask that all participants observe professionalism and courtesy throughout this event. Without further delay, let us begin today's event. To formally open our proceedings, it is my now great privilege to invite the chairperson of the Regional and Rural Planning Research Group, Professor Joko Santoso Abisuroso, to deliver his greetings and remarks. Professor Joko, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thanks the Dean of the School of Architecture, Planning and Policy Development, Professor Puspita Dirgahayani. Uh, in this opportunity is represented by Dr. Saud Sagala. He is our head of Master and PhD degree program of Urban and Regional Planning, who is also himself actually a member of our research group. Distinguished speakers, Professor Timothy Oaks from the University of Colorado Boulder, Dr. Muhammad Jainal Ibad, Dr. Tessa Talita, who is also from our research group. I also would like to thanks the discussion for the webinar today, Dr. Wilmar Salim, and then also would like to thanks as well Professor Delik Hudala, as well as all the distinguished participant and all the partner institution. First of all, I also would like to introduce the Regional and Rural Planning Research Group. We call as KKPWD, as a research group within the School of Architecture, Planning and Policy Development of ITB that focus on regional planning, rural development, territorial governance, and regional transformation. We have been actively contributing to academic discussion as well as policy debates on contemporary regional development issues. The webinar today will discuss the growing importance of infrastructure mega projects in Indonesia, particularly along the Jakarta-Bandung corridor, and the need to critically examine how this project shape urban development, regional integration, governance processes, and economic transformation. Again, I would like to highly appreciate Professor Timothy Oaks as visiting scholar and research collaborator. He's a professor of geography at the University of Colorado Boulder, whose research on infrastructure, urban transformation, governance, and geopolitics in East and Southeast Asia has significantly advanced global understanding of infrastructure-led development and its broader societal implication. At last, we expect that the webinar will have several outcomes. Firstly, to foster productive dialogue, to generate new insight and research collaboration and contribute both academic and policy perspective for more inclusive and sustainable regional development in Indonesia. Uh, that's my speak. Thanks, and I give back to the MC. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Joko, for your inspiring opening remarks and for your continued leadership in advancing regional planning discourse in Indonesia. We are honored to have with us today the head of Urban Planning and Transport Study Program, Pak Saud Sagala. It is now my privilege to invite Professor Saud Sagala to deliver her welcome address. Pak Saud.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the seminar of maybe the title is on the infrastructure mega project, yeah, and I think it's very important topic. I would like to highlight that about 1.5 months ago, actually, we conducted another seminar, a bit similar topic, but that also shows how our interest on this topic as well. At the time, I think Pak Delik gave a presentation as well, right, on the regional governance and infrastructures. And we have a reference at the time on kawasan pengembangan aglomerasi Rebana. It's like a Rebana agglomeration economic center, which is within Java province. I don't know whether you know about it, you heard about it as well. So in Indonesia, particularly, I think this topic is very important, but not only Indonesia. I think I learned from Pak Delik as well. It also happens in many parts of the globe. So how we manage the regional governance will be very, very important. So I think this is something that we would like to hear from Professor Timothy Oakes and also others, including discussion and also from our, I would say, our alumni, Dr. Ibad, who completed his study here and now, of course, being a faculty in ITERA, we look forward to continue collaboration and also discuss about this topic. And I really encourage students to participate, to connect, not only seeing the seminar like this, but to connect. And I learned a lot during my graduate study that connecting with people with, I would say, high profiles and also people who have done more in terms of research and also collaboration will increase also your confidence, your knowledge, and even more opportunities in the future. So I would like to say congratulations for the host, and also I would like to highlight that we support this kind of event very, I would say, very frequent. Last week we also had one professor from Texas University, Texas, not really Texas, Texas Austin, if I'm not mistaken, Professor Deden Rukmana, who was also alumni from ITB. So we really look forward to have more like this in the future. And hopefully this is not your first time to Indonesia, but to have more coming and also to have a collaboration. And I have to go to another meeting, I'm sorry, because of double booking. But that's not really my intention, but that's what is really the duty I'm doing now. And with this, I would like, on behalf of the Dean of the School of Architecture, Planning and Policy Development, uh, I would like to open for this seminar, and I encourage everybody to take active participations to make use of this information and to ask critical and challenge questions so that you will get, really the perspective from the global and also from the knowledge that exists in relation to this topic. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you, Pak Saud.
Thank you, Dr. Saud Sagala, for the most encouraging words. Before we proceed, we would like to take a moment for a group photographers to commemorate today's event with Prof. Joko and Dr. Saud Sagala. We kindly request all participants to remain on their seat, and for online participants to please remain on your screens with your cameras turned on. Our team will coordinate for the photo session. Silakan Pak, mungkin bisa difoto dari depan. Di Baik, untuk yang online akan saya bantu foto. Slide pertama. Oke. 1, 2, 3. Untuk slide selanjutnya. 1, 2, 3. Terima kasih. Okay, thank you for all participants and our photographer team. We will now transition to the academic segment and main segment of today's program. It is my honor to hand over the proceedings to our distinguished moderator, Professor Delik Udala, who will guide us through the presentation and discussions this afternoon. Professor Delik, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you for MC for introducing the event. So now we are entering into the main part of this webinar. After the introduction, I'm very happy to be the moderator for this topic that are recently gaining debates in theoretical and practical occasions, I guess, both in Indonesia and also globally. So it is likely that we have 3 speakers that can speak from, I would say, different perspective, one from geographical, one from planning, and the other from governance perspective, and how we can see this emerging phenomena of mega project, corridor, and regional transformation in a more engaging way. And so the first speaker I would like to introduce, and he has been introduced, but would like to remind that it's very honor that we have now Professor Tim Oakes as Professor of Geography from the University of Colorado Boulder. And please, Tim, you can join here. He is specializing in urban and infrastructural transformation, primarily in East and Southeast Asia. His work critically examines how culture, governance, and infrastructure intersect in processes of urban redevelopment, state-making, geopolitical power, with particular attention to China's infrastructure-driven development models and its transnational influence. He has substantially contributed to scholarly discussions on infrastructural urbanism, the development of new areas, and digital and energy infrastructures, providing influential perspective on the role of cities and infrastructure in shaping contemporary urban geopolitics. So I think as the first presenter, all presenter will have like 20 minutes presentation, and we'll have finally 30 to 40-minute discussion, begin with the discussion for Dr. Wilmar. So I guess first the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Pak Delik. It's a real pleasure and honor to be here today speaking with you. I've had a really nice couple weeks here in Bandung so far. Thanks to you, and thanks to many of you here today taking very good care of me. It's been a really a nice time. I've been learning a tremendous amount about corridor development, infrastructure development in this region. I am new to Indonesia as a site of field work and research. My background is in China, where I've done almost my entire career basically has been studying in China and doing research there. And I'm actually going to talk more about China today than Indonesia. But I'm also going to be offering some theoretical perspectives on the topic that hopefully will spur some interest and help us develop some connections between the expertise that I bring from China and what's happening here. So. And I'm going to time myself because I'm pretty sure I'll probably go too long. So we'll see. And that's, I don't know if this works. There we go. So I have a brief outline, which I can't see on this screen now, but there we go, of what I want to talk about today. It's just the brief lecture in 4 parts. The first part is basically the introduction, but it kind of lays out my broader arguments about how I'd like to be thinking about these spaces that we're thinking about as corridors, not in terms of urbanization as much as in terms of the concept of infrastructure space. And in the second part, we'll talk about China more specifically. And the third and fourth parts, I'll probably have to rush through a little bit, but they try to bring some broader theoretical and contextual implications of the work that I do in China to bear on this topic. Okay, let's see if, there we go. So there's been a recent surge in analysis of new patterns of urbanization related to China's increasing global presence. Of particular interest in this work has been the corridor as the dominant spatial aspiration of China's global investment and influence objectives. Here, China's infrastructure-led development pattern intersects with an urban planning and urban studies concept, the corridor, with a broad and complicated genealogy, as Professor Hidala has written quite a bit about and could tell us more about that than I can. But as Tessidik et al. Explain in one of their recent articles, corridors are typically developed with an aim to accelerate circulation and flow. The concept has its origins, they tell us, in the linear planning tradition, linear extension, that is, of cities based on infrastructure development. Corridors also appear in regional planning initiatives aimed at enhancing connectivity to stimulate economic development in peripheral regions. And while corridors are also caught up in histories of colonialism and imperialist extraction, they have more recently been getting a lot of attention as a key feature of Chinese planning models. While corridors are often conceptualized in relation to urbanization, it seems worthwhile to consider that the urban might be constraining our framework of analysis rather than enabling. Rather than framing these patterns in terms of urbanization, then we might understand corridors as infrastructure spaces, consisting of a multiplicity of heterogeneous spatial forms. Such spaces are evoked by Abdumalik Simone by his concept of the surrounds from his book from 2022. And quoting him in that book, the surrounds are landscapes that exceed the salience of available vernaculars of analysis and intervention, where provisional sutures, half-lives, diffractions, disjuncture, compensation, and transients create unsettled urbanites in populations. A similar approach is also taken by Pushpa Arabindu, who proposes a reconceptualized hinterland as a territorial form whose new economic geography of extraction, production, and circulation can no longer be seen through the idiom of 20th century agglomeration processes. So with that context, that theoretical kind of background and context in mind, I want to propose 3 arguments, only one of which I'll really get to talk about in any detail in this talk. And that's going to be the second one. But the first one is that we need a new lexicon of concepts to describe and analyze these spaces. So another way of saying this argument, or to begin thinking about that, is that we can't necessarily see these kinds of spaces as cities, or even though they often masquerade as cities to come. But the term corridor is also, in many ways, inadequate to describe these spaces. These are spaces of extraction, of dispossession, of precarity, suspended between rural and urban, and yet they are neither rural nor urban. And so this, I think, is part of what Simone and Aurobindo are getting at with their ideas of the surrounds. Simone has also written about the extensions. There's a kind of an effort to think about a new language for these kinds of spaces in order to open up the conceptual possibilities that we might not have been thinking about, particularly in terms of urbanization. So that's the first general argument that I'm making here. The one that I'll talk a little bit more about today, though, is the second one, that these spaces are conduits of power. They're primarily territorializing technologies. This in particular has emerged as a central feature of the Chinese state's embrace of the corridor model of development. And then the third argument is that these are inhabited spaces. We need to understand them as spaces where settlement still occurs, where people struggle to make a go of it and not be mere observers of the world spinning around them. These are spaces, in other words, where place still matters. This is something that Kanai and Schindler pick up on, or in my reading of their work, they pick up on this when they tell us that these spaces need more attention and analysis because enhancing flow typically ignores the real needs of people who live in these spaces. And to quote them, we need more empirically informed studies of how ensuring connectivity and sustaining high volumes of unimpeded circulation often take primacy over addressing local needs, livelihood concerns, and the diversification of the economic base according to place-specific potentials. So I thought it might be helpful to explore briefly the emergence of the infrastructure corridor in China and how it has generated a particular form of urban development that ultimately enables the urban, ultimately exceeds the urban as a useful analytical category. So in what follows, I'll first explore the infrastructure corridor in China before drawing some broader implications of how we understand infrastructure-led development beyond China. Okay, so part two. The first infrastructure corridor in China was arguably built around the Guangshen Expressway, which was completed in 1997 by Hong Kong tycoon Gordon Wu's construction firm Hopewell Holdings, one of China's first large-scale connective infrastructure projects linking Shenzhen and Guangzhou in the Pearl River Delta, or PRD. I'll refer to PRD after this. The toll road became a model for the massive infrastructure investments that have come to signify China's approach to state-led urbanization. Yet before this mega project was built and took hold, the PRD had already emerged as something of an organic space of what we might call infrastructural urbanism. Historically, the region was an amalgamation of administratively designated villages and towns connected by water infrastructures. These infrastructures supported an elaborate project of reclaiming land from the sea and produced a network of settlements over hundreds of years. Subsequently, layers of roads, highways, and railroads were built. Let's see if we get that. There we go. Establishing new threads of connection between settlements that attracted commercial and rural industrial developments. In the 1980s, construction in towns and villages formed a continuous, unplanned, built-up area along these new terrestrial infrastructure corridors. As the infrastructuralization of the region intensified, industrial production became increasingly segmented into myriad small-scale entities, the so-called lean factories of China's export development model. The rural spaces undergoing rapid and generally chaotic urbanization were also spaces of what came to be called lean planning, in which connective infrastructures ran ahead of and defined patterns of urban development more than any comprehensive urban planning ever did. Infrastructures, as Gutierrez and Porteve put it, were attacking the boundaries that articulate urban space, blurring distinctions between rural and urban. But this organically emerging infrastructure space of the early reform era PRD was then supercharged and scaled up by Gordon Wu's Guangsheng Expressway, which became the primary vector for further industrialization, urbanization, and technological investment, such that the connective network was no longer determined by the localities through which, and increasingly over which, the highway passed. The expressway, which was symbolically opened July 1st, 1997, the very date that Hong Kong became a special administrative region of the PRC, came to mark the territorializing efforts of the state to shape and control the future urbanization and economic development of the region, where these processes had already emerged on their own. Infrastructure urbanism produces landscapes that often confuse our expectations of what an emerging city is supposed to look like. This confusion was noted in the early years of the PRD's emergence as an infrastructure space. The famous architect Rem Koolhaas, for example, referred to the region as an urban condition free of urbanity, referring to the just completed Guangsheng Expressway. He quipped, "It is difficult to understand what the need for it might be. And clearly there isn't one. If you take one of the off-ramps, you won't necessarily arrive anywhere. This enormous system only exists to trigger off a future urban situation." End of quote. Despite Koolhaas's flippancy, I suppose, the expressway did not lack a purpose. It not only became a magnet for new urban developments, industrial clusters, and the conversion of formerly agricultural spaces into residential compounds and golf courses, but it also foreshadowed the state's scaled-up efforts to assert infrastructural power as a means of imposing territorial authority over the region as a whole. This scaling up is perhaps most spectacularly manifest in a later and much larger project, the 55-kilometer-long Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, completed in 2018. The bridge was originally proposed by Gordon Wu, the same person who built the Guangsheng Expressway, in the 1980s, but its ultimate construction, which cost nearly $19 billion US, came about as part of the Chinese state's efforts to use large-scale infrastructures to create an integrated region, the so-called Greater Bay Area, that would diminish Hong Kong's role as a distinct space politically, culturally, and economically. The high-speed rail link that terminated in West Kowloon in Hong Kong was another part of this effort to wield infrastructure power in asserting greater central state territorial authority over Hong Kong, and by further integrating it into the Greater Bay Area. And in fact, much of the protests that went on in Hong Kong leading up to the imposition of the national security law, many of those protests were initiated by resistance to the building of the high-speed rail line itself, because people understood it as a direct threat to Hong Kong's autonomy and sovereignty. So to wrap up some of those points, or they summarize them at this point, get there. There we go. Infrastructure builds territorial coherence in China where it did not historically exist. The territorializing power of the state in China is, in short, produced through infrastructure power. And so the infrastructure corridor is not merely a spatial form of urban development in China, but more importantly, a process of state territorial expansion, integration, and control, a manifestation of state infrastructural power. Okay, let's go on to part 3. How am I doing? Not too bad. Circulation and power. As noted at the outset, infrastructural corridors function as spaces of circulation. China's new urbanization plan, initiated in 2014, envisioned an integrated system of 19 city clusters connected by a network of high-speed rail. As designated clusters, such city regions undergo a process of infrastructuring whereby existing cities are repositioned within infrastructure corridors of circulation and network connection. Leonardo Romandetti has analyzed this process in the city cluster of China's Central Plains in Henan province, comprising Kaifeng and Zhengzhou and the urban corridor between them, which is what this map shows. Here, what was originally a city-focused urban development strategy was infrastructured to create an integrated polycentric corridor at a vast scale, but without a clearly designated or prioritized center. At the heart of this kind of urban development is mobility of capital, of labor, and of data, a kind of logistics model. The model is circulatory rather than weighted towards existing city centers. What matters is access to the infrastructural network of circulation rather than nearness to a city center. Labor migration in China has been in some ways reimagined by these circulatory networks, whereby a more regional form of labor mobility is displacing older patterns of rural to urban and interior to coastal migration. So this is not simply a matter of migrants who might have previously traveled to a distant coastal city now finding labor opportunities more accessible within their own local region. It is more importantly a matter of former farmers and other settled ruralites, rural people, with no intention to migrate, becoming daily commuters circulating within the newly infrastructured space that they find themselves living in. As city regions are infrastructured, networks of circulation reach out to formerly sedentary villagers, presenting access opportunities that were previously out of reach. Circulation based on expansion of the national railroad network linking city clusters has recalibrated urban social life in profound ways, such that gaotie, the Chinese for high-speed rail, has become a prefix for new social arrangements, such as gaotie marriages, involving partners working in 2 different city clusters. The term gaotie culture, gaotie wenhua, has now signifies a new era of national cultural confidence for China. And there's also other gaotie things that I could talk about. For example, what you see on this, but this is like people who transform themselves during their commute on the train, and they enter without makeup and they leave with makeup and they become transformed, just like China has transformed. Anyway, but I'm not going to spend too much time on that topic. But I'm going to remind us that Michel Foucault understood governance in part as a question of the circulation rather than the localization of power. Modern governance emerged, he suggested, in urban infrastructure projects that sought to maximize circulation for the purposes of improved hygiene, more efficient trade, both within the town and between the town and the broader economy, and new forms of surveillance, which were necessary to maintain control over the increasing numbers of bodies in circulation. David Alf, that's what this quote is from, similarly argues that in 17th and 18th century Britain, the public work of the highway incorporated towns into a communicable nation by obliging their toleration of through traffic. Domestic transport required what Deleuze and Guattari call the forced coordination of towns to maintain circulation between them. It is this circulatory quality of infrastructure space that now defines new patterns of livelihood in China, and I think throughout regions of Southeast Asia, as we'll be learning more about later today, I think. All right. How are we doing? So just to wrap all this up, I want to return to the title, which is not the title that I initially shared, but it's the title that I like. The City to Come is Not the City. What I'm getting at with this title derives from something that Henri Lefebvre wrote in The Urban Revolution, which continues to inspire me. He tells us that while the city was a material manifestation of historical urbanization processes, those processes had by the post-war era of the middle 20th century exceeded the spatial form of the city itself. That's why critical social analysis, he argues, should focus on urbanization as a process rather than on the city as a spatial form. The modern urbanist commitment to the city as a space of planning and regulation was, in fact, he argued, ideological, in that it represented a project of abstracting away from or even erasing the social contradictions of urbanization. For Lefebvre, then, the city was an ideological representation of urbanization processes rather than a particular moment in those processes. The point is that an infrastructural approach and a willingness to understand the corridor in China as a process of territorial infrastructuralizing might help us frame the crucial question that remains with us about these spaces of power. How do people live in them? How do people inhabit them? How do they make them their own? For Lefebvre, this was the question at the heart of his idea of the right to the city. We might reword that then as the right to the corridor, or the right to settle in a space of flow. How does one turn what Newhouse and Simone called the strange non-place of the corridor into a place? That's an empirical question for research, as the research that I hope to continue engaging in will focus on, and I think many of the others in this room. But it's also a conceptual question, a theoretical question. And I would argue at the end then that conceptually the answer lies in reconceiving such spaces in terms of territorializing power, such that the right to settle becomes understood as a counter-territorial social movement. And I will leave it at that for now, and hopefully we have some good discussion, but I want to make sure we had plenty of time for our other speakers. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim, for closing with a triggering discussion on how we need to see corridor in relation to power and people rights. And for the next presenter, I would like to invite Dr. Muhammad Zainal Ibad. Please come to the stage. Dr. Muhammad Zainal Ibad is a postgraduate researcher at the Center for Infrastructure and Regional Development, ITB. Sorry, not postdoctoral, sorry, postdoctoral researcher. He is also a lecturer at the Institute Technology of Sumatra, new brother of ITB. His research focuses on urban and regional planning, transportation planning, disaster resilience, governance, and self-organization in complex socio-spatial systems. He has developed scholarly contribution on informal transportation systems, adaptive governance, post-disaster transport transformation, mega-regional transport planning, and the application of self-organization theory in planning studies. His recent work explores emergent transportation systems, electric vehicle transition in rural areas, and the dynamics of formal-informal infrastructure interaction in developing countries. I think Dr. Ibad will still discuss more on the global perspective of how from a self-organizing mechanism, but yeah, let's see what similarity and differences way of looking at transformation at this interurban scale from his work, please.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Prof. Delik, for the introductions. Could you share my presentations, please? Yeah, thank you. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Muhammad Zainal Ibad. I am alumni of the doctoral program in urban regional planning, and also in Department of Urban Regional Planning in ITERA. Now I will present my ideas about how the reframing mega regional planning, a theoretical synthesis of governance complexity, and also self-organizations. Maybe I will use timers, so I'm not. Okay. Okay, thanks for your times. Next. In the 21st century urbanizations, here I want to deliver about how the mega regionalizations in the global perspectives, and literally we'll discuss about the North Coast of Java as an Indonesian case, and how the planning also governance involve and intervene the complexity, the governance, the processes of the mega regionalization in North Coast of Java. The first one, 21st century urbanization, we could see how the formations emerge as a mega region as a dominant spatial formation that characterized by the functional interdependence between metros. Like Indonesia, we have Jakarta and also Surabaya, Semarang and so on, and integrated infrastructure corridors by the railways, high-speed rails, trans toll road, and so on, and also the engines of global competitiveness. Traditional planning that oscillates between top-down and also collaborative fragmentations fails to capture the emergence of these dynamics, especially in the new form of urbanization like mega regions. Next. So I could introduce how or why master plans often fail at scales, because it's too rigid. Like 5 to 10 years, master plans can predict the rapid market shift and also silhouette executions and ignoring the market. Here's why the self-organization is matters to understanding the complexity of mega regions. Next. And also the problem that I want to address is how the traditional mega region planning relies on top-down coordinations, but fails to account for emergence adaptive spatial dynamics of complex system in the mega region system, and how the conceptual framework that integrating the complexity theory and self-organizations will make understands how the mega region as adaptive assemblages. Next, the complexity in spatial planning shows that cities or regions are not a static determinants, linear objects, but it's evolving as a system and defined by non-linearity, transitions, feedback loops, emergence of spontaneous macro patterns, path dependence, and coevolution. These characteristics also we've seen in China how the non even in the region that really centralized, there's also the self-organization, how they feedback and the complex system, and also how the people adapt with the development. This non-linear transition is happen in all the system, all the complex system, including the mega region, how the emergence of spontaneous macro patterns and path dependence and also coevolutions is also the character of this complexity in spatial planning that we have seen in a lot of scales in urbanizations. Next. The self-organization is characterized by distributed agency, autophasis, and also emergence, the spontaneous patterns, and the capacity of reproduce and maintain its own organizational structures. And the last is macro structures arising from the centralized micro interactions without central designs. Next. Next, we'll see the layer synthesis of strategy evolution. The first we will mentions about structural structures. The second is institutional mediations and how the feedback and adaptive mechanisms in the mega regional scales, of course, and The fourth is emergent spatial outcomes. The structural triggers can came from economic restructurings, like in China or USA, and infrastructure pressures, and also it shows in Indonesia, like the highway and so on. Environmental risks, it's happened in most of Europe, and also political reforms. The second is institutional mediations. We have three types of institutional mediation: centralized structures, like in most of East Asia, Tokyo, China, also Indonesia. Polycentric adaptive we could see in most of Europe's mega region, Randstad, Rhin-Ruhr, and some of the mega regions in Europe's, and fragmented networks. We could see some in the North America, like how the San Francisco Bay Area and some mega region types. And the third is how the formal and informal mechanism happen and involve the mega region system. And the last is how the emergent spatial outcomes like polycentric organizations, corridor integrations in Indonesia and also China, functional specializations like special economic zone and so on, and evolving territorial imaginaries. Next, structural strikers, we could see some industrial upgrading and productions gentrifications, congestions, and other climate risks. Maybe I will next. The infrastructure saturation as a primary threshold conditions. Recently, infrastructures can push the system toward reorganizations when incremental adjustments could be failed. Next. And it's also the institutional mediations about the institutional layering and structured adaptations. Next. And we could see how the case like Greater Tokyo, they have centralized by statutory control, vertical integration, resource mobilization. Also, we see in China how they develop the huge infrastructure mega project and so on. And the second governance architecture is polycentric. They show mutual adjustment, distributed authority, like in Randstad, Netherlands, and negotiations arenas. The last is the fragmented networks we could see in San Francisco Bay Area by voluntary collaborations, policy networks, innovation leads, and some of cases that we have seen a lot of literature in mega regions. Next, the central structures should be shown as have a strength, strategic coherence, and rapid resources mobilization, but its risk, rigidity, and lack of local innovations. Next. The polycentric have a high resilience and responsive to local change, but it's vulnerable to implementation the gaps. Like we how see the Randstad and some mega region in Europe, they have a vulnerable to implementation a lot of projects. Next. The fragmented network is have foster emergent experimentation, but it's also have weakness strategic coordinations between skills, actors, and yeah, sectors. Next. Next, the third is feedback and adaptation, how the monitoring, deliberation, and also recalibrations can be one of the adaptive system in global mega regions. Next, next. Yes, there is, I've mentioned before, there are formal and informal feedback in the self-organization. The formal ones could be shown as for performance benchmark, statutory plans. In Indonesia, we have RTRW, RPJMD, and some master plan that we have, blueprint and so on, housing infrastructural audit, and etc. Informal mechanism or feedback, we have networks, knowledge exchange between university or academia or etc. Iterative dialogue forums in some forum that been created by government or private and crisis index memory, like we have in Brebes exit crisis, yeah, at the time. It makes some feedback and also make a better the policy or also governance. Feedback determines whether governance evolve or remains trapped in reactive cycles. The last is the fourth layer. Next is emergent spatial outcomes between the corridor integrations, polycentric organizations, adaptive specialization, also territorial imaginary. Next, here we show how the governance typology between degree of centralizations and also adaptive capacity. The trend shift toward hybrid, which is centralized adaptive. This one, they made models to balance the strategic oversight between the centralized governments and decentralized learning between the community, the private, and the other sectors to make a better outcomes in planning. Next. They show how the cost of Java as a case study. Next. Java is evolving into mega corridor of urban areas, which is interconnections between mega urban regions like Jabodetabek, Gerbang, Kertoselilo, and some of the regions in Java. It's also a transition from suburbanizations to ex-urbanizations in the outer cities, and also the desa kotasi, which is mixture of agricultural and industrial functions that we could see in Java urbanizations. Next. We could see the scale of urbanization. The first is metropolitan, mega urban, and mega regions that could be characterized by seasonal migration, high-speed rails, and global hubs. Mega urban is weekly flow, and the metropolitan is as a daily commuting. Next. Yeah, in Java we have Jakarta Bandung high-speed train and also Trans Java Expressway that reshape spatial hierarchies in Jakarta Bandung, also Semarang Surabaya with the construction or build of from Trans Java Expressway. Also there are time space compressions between Java and Jakarta and Surabaya, which could be 10 hours or less than 10 hours, and also functional division of labor in some industrial cluster across the Java. Next. There is also circular migration, which multi-scalar functional links between cities, bottom-up adaptive mobility, like we can see from it holiday circular migration and also seasonal exurban interaction between city centers and the hinterlands. Next. The point is how the formal strategies next and statutory plans, national authorities, and so on interact with informal networks like ad hoc coalitions, voluntary collaborations, and also dialogues between stakeholders. Next. Here's how the mega region transport governments of circular migrations from national, regional, local levels, from Ministry of Public Works, Ministry of Transportation, and also the National Police of Traffic. They manage each sectors by the road infrastructures, transport facilities, and also traffic engineering management, and so on. The goal is to find there are also the private sectors and community involved how this governance can be made in circular migration transportations. The goal is to find the sweet spot between centralized strategic oversight and decentralized adaptive flexibility. To meet this sweet spot, we need to make a balance between the centralized and also adaptive capacity, centralization degree and the adaptive capacity. And the last is hybrid, how the centralized and adaptive model synthesis should be came from structured adaptation, orchestrating complexity without suppressing it, and also iterative learning, feedback loops between intervention and spatial outcomes. We know that Indonesia have moved from centralized then to polycentric and also to networks and come back again to centralized structures. How this dynamic of governance is also influence how the self-organization capacity in the community and the regional also local governments. Next. the thing is we have to institutionalize feedback like monitoring indicators and detection of emerging trends, assessing impact of spatial policy, recalibration, iterative strategy, and also new adaptive intervention to many cases, to every triggers in the mega region, and also how this feedback can make a better policy, can make a better processes of mega regionalization system. Next. The actionable framework, because see, we should make more flexible regulations that create enabling conditions rather than rigid master plans that made some innovation or local innovation is not grow or emergence, and made more multi-actor collaborations, strengthen platforms for inter-municipal dialogues, more informal networks, and then more coalitions between regions and like regional infrastructure funds, and also specific purposes vehicles to manage the problem and crisis that emergence in every space or mega region. And the last is digital monitoring, how we could use real-time data to sense a systemic shift that could be made a better decisions, a better policies, and make more this complexity of the mega space, complexity of mega regions could be better managed, could be better planning in the futures. Next, last is planning should be understood not as the pursuit of fixed territorial integrations between cities or regions, but as the ongoing orchestration of complexity in the futures. Thank you for your kind attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Dr. Ibad. So for the last presenter speaker, I would like to invite Dr. Tessa Tarita. Please come to the stage. Tessa is a lecturer at the School of Architecture, Planning and Policy Development, Institut Teknologi Bandung. He holds a PhD in Urban Studies and Planning from the University of Sheffield. Her research focuses on the political economy and governance of large-scale infrastructure and urban megaprojects, with particular attention to state rescaling, territorial politics, and infrastructure-led urban transformation in the Global South. Her latest projects critically examine Indonesia's national strategic projects, including the Jakarta-Bandung High-Speed Railway, contributing to the debates on urban geopolitics, state power, and spatial governance. So I think Dr. Tessa will present to us his research. I think some of his research that has been focused on high-speed rail development and how it's contribute to the transformation of Jakarta-Bandung urban corridor. Please, Tessa.
Okay, thank you, Padlik, for introducing me. I'm Tessa, lecturer at Urban and Regional Planning at ITB, SAPPD ITB, School of Architecture, Planning and Policy Development. And here, one of the presenter in this webinar. Very honored to be here. In this session, I would like to share. Actually, disclaimer, this is our research project, ongoing project with also Padelik and a team, but also a bit mixed with my previous research as well. So I would like to share a bit of our findings so far. Okay. In this presentation, I would like to only separate into three sections. The first one is introduction, a little bit about the background and what has been done or research about urbanization in Java, especially in the corridor development in Java. And also the second part, I would like to talk about the findings and discuss some general idea that has been discussed with us, and also the rest about the future outlook. It's a bit of imaginary for Java's urbanization. Okay, the first one, maybe a little bit of you is already familiar with urbanization is in Java, but Tim maybe not for you. But that's why I would like to talk talk about urbanization in Java history in her historical perspective. So it start with the expansion of Jakarta city and its surroundings, and the expansion of urban is called Jakarta metropolitan area, or first called Jabodetabek. It's abbreviation of Jakarta, Bogor, Depok, Tangerang, and Bekasi. And then Pak Tommy Firman has been doing research in urbanization of Jakarta, I think since 1990s. And also it follows by Padelik as well. It moves to the industrial corridor, because in the west part of Java, you have already also witnessed the process of urbanization and industrialization in this part of Java. And then it's also happening, the industrialization to the east part and until to the urban agglomeration. And then the latest publication is our ongoing research on the national strategic projects that has influenced the process of urbanization as well. So the large-scale projects also have been like influencing the pattern of urbanization, I would say. And that's why in this session, I would like to talk about the new direction of urbanization in Java, especially talking about high-speed rail. Okay, Jakarta Bandung high-speed rail is a flagship project from the previous government, Pak Joko Widodo, and it's also the first high-speed rail in Southeast Asia. There's also framing on the like global initiative, Belt and Road Initiative from China. And that's why there is a collaboration or partnership between Indonesia and China in building this big project in Indonesia. And for in the historical perspective, Pak Wilmar Salim also discussed about high-speed rail in the planning process and also the initial process regarding the competition between China and also Japan bidding for this project. And it is already operated finally here in 2023. So in this research, I would like to say about the high-speed rail is not only a transport project, it's also economic growth strategy and also development catalyst in each part of stations. And also this also relates to what Tim's said before on the restructuring mechanism of infrastructure space. And that's why the question might raise is in this situation is how does the Jakarta-Bandung high-speed rail change urbanization patterns in the Jakarta-Bandung corridor, and also what happens in between cities, so-called, of the Jakarta-Bandung corridor, particularly around HSR station areas. So this is what has been discussed just last week with Pak Delek and team, the in-between, a space or cities. I might be, it's not only, if we refer to the first presentation from Tim, it's not cities, but maybe spaces, to a bit broad about here. And this term is make us thinking about the urban areas located between the major cities of, in this case, is Jakarta and also Bandung, as a metropolitan centers that often function as a transitional space, but may gain strategic importance through the infrastructure investments. And thus, or therefore, HSR in this case can transform the in-between cities from peripheral locations into strategic regional nodes in urbanization patterns. So there are two parts of literature here about the high-speed rail itself. High-speed rail is often framed as strategic infrastructure to stimulate regional economic growth and integration. So the improved connectivity between two spaces. From the corridor perspective, it's also increased the intensity of the corridor. And this project also not only technical ventures, but also deeply embedded in the state-led territorial strategies in many cases, including Indonesia. We do the infrastructure-led development with the national policy. It's called National Strategic Projects, or PSN, NSPs. And this kind of regulation aim at reorganizing space, like also Tim mentioned in China, and the connectivity between region, national and global networks. But to add to those discussion, my other publication or ongoing publication with Pak Delik also talk about how these narratives and also this kind of regulations aim at the Java centricism as well. So there are territorial spatial governance that control how to specific place to move the capital to specific places, and the others not really have the opportunity to even increase their economy or leverage their income. Okay, however, their implementation often leads to uneven development and also spatial selectivity that I mentioned. And the second one is about the speculative urbanism, which I also found in the high-speed rail projects, Jakarta-Bandung high-speed rail, especially in the part of stations, because as you know, the Tegaluar station, Padalarang, and also Karawang station is so-called, it's not very built, so there's opportunity to speculate the land to improve the land economy and also the economic productivity of the space. Yeah, that's why some of private developers have been also intensively invest in many projects around the stations of high-speed rail. Okay, the next one is I'll be talking about the arena of the decision making of the high-speed rail in Jakarta Bandung. So as you know, in Indonesia, we have the hierarchical governance from the national level to the provincial level and to the municipal level. So the national level has particularly drive the projects and initiate the project and also drive how the projects implemented with the directives and also many national regulations. And it's also drive the local and also regional government to change their initial spatial plans to fit to the national level agenda and how the project can be implemented. So in the public administration arena is shaped by the institutional position and also boundary and determine the roles and limits of the national ministries, provincial and also local authorities. And in the transport arena, it's also affected by the choice where the depot is located based on the technical aspects and other kind of mobility infrastructure, the connectivity between the hospital station with the local transportation, for example. And then if we talk about the station, also it will lead to the development surrounding the stations, which might be interesting to some private developers, especially for the real estate development. And also the last one is about the design. And probably this will affect the planners and also architects to involve in the process of development of station. Let's first start with Karawang. Karawang Station is officially open on December 24th, 2024. This was the last station operated over a year after the main high-speed rail line began operation. It's located in the Karawang Regency, a hub of industrial estates and agriculture, known for its rice production and position as an industrial corridor outside Jakarta. And also Karawang's transit-oriented development potential attracted attention from the local and foreign property markets, such as we can see the Grand Outlet and also Villaggio Summarecon Outlet has been operated also started in 2023 and 2024, including the other township projects. So if you visit Karawang, you can see the differences between the East Karawang and West Karawang. So basically West Karawang is near the station, close to the station, and there are some many industrial estates there located, but there is one commercial area, it's the Grand Outlet. And they have been collaborate with KCIC, so the connection from the Grand Outlet and station there, they provide a shuttle to go to shop there in the Grand Outlet. Otherwise, in the other hand, the Village Outlet is located in East Karawang. It's how the residential areas are emerging and still growing at the moment. Projects like Kartika Residence and Citra Grande, for example, already also leveraging station proximity. It's about 40 minutes from there. They're also offering shuttle service for residents, and also at the moment they are currently improving several new access routes, including connecting road via the Shibet River Bridge and also toll access from that capture the market from Jakarta as well. And for the station development, the Karawang plan is to develop expand the station area. So they have been acquired the land from the paddy fields here. So from our latest interview, the locals said that they have 75 hectares. They used to have 75 hectares, and now they only have 5 hectares left because the 70 hectares have been acquired by KCIC. And then there's also the big developers like Sumaricon, TGO, and others that also capture the market and developing land in Karawang. And for the Padalarang case, we can see that this is different kind of picture. You can see this much dense compared to the Karawang station. So for your information, it's because the first idea is to look at the station in Walini. It's also same the paddy field, the plantation area. So it's not a dense region like this. But for in terms of financial and also feasibility, the national governments have decided to move the Walini station to Padalarang. And in Padalarang, because the KAI, PT KAI, have several lands there, so they can like grow the station from the previous station and develop this for HSR to support HSR development. And because this already overcrowded space, the development in Padalarang creating the development issues to the local communities and residents in Padalarang, especially for the land acquisition and also access problem. They have been traffic all day. They said they have traffic from morning to night. And then there's also issue on flooding. They mentioning about the bad flooding in the rainy season. Yeah, they also, if we look at the master plan, they also told us about the park and ride based TOD concept. But when we went there, we didn't see any kind of development for the park and ride at the moment. And the possibility for the Padalarang station development is to be a transit for the people that have leisure in Kota Baru Parahyangan and also went to go to Bandung, because they have already provide a shuttle to several locations for tourism activities. And then for Tegaluar, it's also the last stop of the HSR, Jakarta-Bandung HSR. And this is located in Bandung Regency. It's of Bandung City. And Tegaluar was chosen as the location because it's considered meet the KCIC criteria for depot location. And also the area surrounding the Tegaluar station was still underdeveloped, and it's facilitating the station's development. And the idea is to make a new regional activity center of Bandung Metropolitan in near the Gede Bage sub-district. And also there is an issue of land acquisition because the land surrounding the station is already acquired by the local developers, and the KCIC have no land there, so they have to negotiate to the local developers. And the other issue is about if you look at the specific metropolitan area in Bandung, they have already plan to develop Bandung metropolitan. So they have like a urban mobility plan, and also how they can make use of KCIC stations to leverage their vision in integrating the transportation. However, there are some obstacles here because there is weak planning. There's no infrastructures, facilities at the moment, and they're not mapping out this from the start, and also weak intergovernmental coordination between the provincial level and the local level or municipal level. And there's also the budgetary constraints where the regencies only receive an allocation of less than 100 billion per year. And no synchrony with the spatial planning, the local spatial planning. So the vision is not included in the spatial planning at the moment, and when KCIC began and require spatial planning revision. And also there is large developers there that control the land around stations, for example, Sumarekon, and also Kota Baru Parahyangan, which might be more powerful than the current local government. So in the governance aspect, if we look at a deep dive to the two locations in Jakarta, in Bandung metropolitan area, we could see that in Padalarang, local government is more proactive, I would say. They initiated the technical spatial planning and engaged with the academician and local consultants. And they also initiate the collaboration with the Kota Baru Parahyangan to make a new connector road from the Kota Baru to station to open up new access to the station. And also there is feeder integration and shuttles to the specific tourism locations near Bandung, including Dusun Bambu and also Lembang. There have been spots that can be used to go to there from station. And also there is also strong collaboration between the local government and private consultant. And then for Tegaluar, we can see that there are lack of initiative from the district government or the regency, which also hampered the land acquisition and development process in Tegaluar station. And there's also some resistance from the local communities regarding the development, and lack of collaboration between the different actors and stakeholders. So there's no clear coordination between the relevant actors or key stakeholders there. And also there's no feeder connectivity. So people, if you want to go to Tegaluar, you need to go there by driving. There's no specific public transportation there. And it's only for people who live near the Tegaluar, because if you live in Bandung, you probably not to go to Tegaluar. It's not optional for you. So you probably choose to go to the Bandung station and then go to the feeder to Padalarang. So it's in market perspective, it's not really captivating for people. And then for the real estate developer, it's Sumarekon there, but there's no partnership between at the moment. There's no partnership between Sumarekon and KCIC, but there's still ongoing discussion between them. Okay. And the condition, I've talked about this, but I would say the land around the station in Padalarang is mostly owned by the local residents. So people have relocated to other districts, sub-districts, but they still live there. So it's you can see there's a bit overcrowded, and also there's a slum areas near the stations. And while the KAI owns land for the station, further TOD expansion is constrained by the fragmented land ownership and also modest demand. And also there is less aggressive activity by major developers, but the lucky one is Kota Baru Parahyangan, because they gain much more benefit from this station. And for Tegaluar, like I said earlier, its private developer is Summarecon is in moderate speculative interest there, because there is no demand at the moment. Probably in the next 5 or 10 years, we could see the differences then. So for reflection, I would like to say this Jakarta-Bandung high-speed rail project represents more than just a transportation initiative. It possesses the capacity to transform the economic structure, change urbanization patterns, and reshape regional governance throughout the Jakarta-Bandung corridor, and even further for Java Island. And yeah, there's some discussion on infrastructure-led development, speculative urbanism, and also governance on the infrastructure development. And other things that we can also discuss about the fragmentation and differentiated outcomes from each station, station-led urbanization processes, and also the interaction of governance and the speculative practices. For the future outlook, this is an illustration. I think I and also other Padalix team in 2020 or 2019 have made some illustration, but I also asked AI to improve it to the current condition. So this is the idea is to show the corridor. I would say this is the mega region and also the corridor development in Java. So the biggest one is Jakarta Bandung, of course, the Western Java mega region that connecting Jakarta and Bandung, and also this will be extended by the high-speed rail corridor, and also influencing the urbanization in the in-between cities where the station is located. And also there is also the industrial development in the Rebana corridor that also will increase the urbanization along the north coast of Java corridor. And if the high-speed rail continue to develop until Surabaya, there would be many cities or regions that will be affected by this plan. And of course, how the local government took the opportunity and how they manage the infrastructure space would be interesting to see later on. And for the Jakarta-Bandung high-speed rail per se, it's already discussed in 2025, but I haven't heard any continuation on the discussion. But yeah, from the national perspective, it's also will be one of the biggest project, but at the moment the focus is for MBG. So yeah, it would be postponed, but we can see in the future how the Jakarta-Bandung high-speed rail will be developed. And also there's a possible future research in the speculation and urban transformation to examine how the transport mega projects or infrastructure mega projects generate speculative expectation, new geographies of investment, and also investigate the how real estate, commercial, and mixed-use developments reshape peri-urban territories, and also explore the corridor urbanization, local governance, and placemaking while building a study on how HSR territorialized Indonesia decentralized space through rules, institution, and investments. And in the financial and economic perspectives, we can also investigate how infrastructure and surrounding land become assets for value capture and monetization, and develop frameworks for assessing the distribution of risk, economic resilience, and also financial stability implication of infrastructure-led development. Yeah, I think that's all for my presentation and all for this webinar. Thank you for your attention and look forward to our discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Tessa. So I think just to remind you, Tim, he mentioned about MBGM because the free meal. So the free meal program is beating the high-speed railway program at the moment, at least, how AI is an infrastructure corridor in itself, yeah, how to, as a shortcut to see how a future is happening. So I think for the last part, I would like to invite Dr. Wilmar Salim. Please come to the floor, I guess. Just take my seat. I will take another one, please. No, it's not gonna be complicated without you. Otherwise, I have to make comments and that to so I think, but just very wrapped. I think all the trees see how infrastructure and corridor in the regional context in different ways as from the as a state power and then as planning instruments and as economic development instruments. I guess that's what I can see how to connect. I mean, the rest, I think Dr. Wilmar can have more detail on how can you synthesize and also maybe give some reflection on the presentation. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Maybe not more detailed. I will only use 5 minutes to maybe spur more discussion about what we have heard so far. So thank you for inviting me to discuss all the three presentations, Pak Delik, on the infrastructure, mega project, urban corridor, and regional transportation. Next, so from the first speaker, Pak Tim, talk about the new geographies of the corridor, the city not to become the city, something like that, like in which he talked about the corridor as an infrastructure space, and he gave an example how China use their infrastructure development in order to expand territorially and then also to integrate and control. As you can see, this is the map which I discovered today, in which 1/3 of the China's area is inhabited by more than 90% of population on the southeast coast, while the 2/3 of the area is not inhabited. But there's a map of high-speed rail network that has been developed in the past 10, 15 years, which is reaching to Urumqi in the south, the western province. But then the question is, how do people inhabit them? Tim suggested how we turn the concept of the right to the city into the right to settle. It will be interesting to see then how this network, for example, the high-speed railway network will, what do you call it, influence how people live and settle in China, in the western part, which is now even more connected and less inhabited than the major population, which is in the southeast coast of China. The second paper talk about the next one, the reframing mega regional planning with the case of urbanization in Java. Mas Ibat emphasize on the need for a new quote unquote regional planning theory by borrowing the concept of complexity and self-organization. And then he went to different layers of how to look at it. But then one thing that I would like to emphasize in my discussion is that he mentioned about how the urbanization is actually expanding the circular migration. We knew since many decades ago there's a circular migration that is happening in Java from rural areas to urban areas. But then with this expanding network of cities served by the transportation corridor, it will expand actually the circular migration. But then how do people do that? This is my question to you. Like, is there any indication or studies that says how do people do the migration with this extension of the transportation corridor? Because I heard some people now, because of the high-speed rail between Jakarta and Bandung, they live in near Tegaluar or Padalarang and work in Jakarta and commute daily, because that's where the money is. And then they, with the money that you earn from Jakarta, you can afford to come commute between Jakarta and Padalarang and Tegaluar to live. And then the third paper is talking about with the case of high-speed rail Jakarta Bandung, shaping the corridor, the regional transformation there's in between cities and Karawang, Padalarang, Tegaluar, and then there's also speculative urbanism. But what I like to highlight is that there's Tessa mentioned briefly about the speculative development that happened between the major private developer with the land small holders of the locals. So, but then the question is, what are their aspiration about what they want to see in their area? What is happening? What do they feel if they see their rice field is marked by some private development? This belong to a company, so they will be yeah, evacuated. There will be what do you call it, replacement of the livelihood, and then probably people also will have to live somewhere, as we have experienced in the past. The reason why I want to highlight this thing, because the next slide, because if I would like to remind you the why we are constructing infrastructure. Infrastructure is to support economic development and human well-being. This is the in as our SDG, and especially in the target, one of the SDG 9 is that to develop infrastructure to support economic development and human well-being, focusing on affordable and equitable access. So we are not just constructing infrastructure just per se for infrastructure. It's not lack of purpose, but there's something to connect one region to another in order to develop its economy. And but now we have to see that also from the perspective of the people who are living there, how they can afford and access the economic opportunities provided by development infrastructure. The last point, last slide, I would like to draw your attention of my own work, which is has been accepted for publication development in practice, in which we look at the new railway development connecting Makassar and Parepare. From the, we would like to see their aspiration, how the railway development influence their migration intention. Not all of them are interested to migrate right away. They are still care about their land. They want to work on their agriculture. But then in order to provide them rural areas working on the agriculture, we need to know about what they aspire for, what kind of well-being facilities that they would like to see in their rural area. And why I would like to emphasize this, because this is something which is inevitable. And then a lot of recent studies on the agrarian agrarian transition suggesting that this is a precarious condition that nobody can help. This is something that is happening when you build something, and then you will create, there's a displacement, also land acquisition, and then get more and more rural people marginalized. But we need to know what they actually want, what they actually need in order to create an imbalance, more balanced regional development between urban and rural areas. So I would like to close my discussion here. Sorry for taking more time than I would like to.
Thank you. Pak Wilmar, please sit down. I think I forgot to introduce that Dr. Wilmar Salim is an associate professor at the Regional Rural Planning Research Groups, and he is graduated from University of Hawaii and then from University of Queensland, yeah, for the master. And his research has expands at several issues like decentralization, poverty alleviation, disaster resilience, and other topics, I guess. And it's good. Yeah, and infrastructure. So he has quite diversity of interests, I guess, in his research. And I guess, and so he points about very unique, because while the 3%er tried to relate infrastructure and urbanism, and he tried to relate infrastructure with agrarian change. So, but there is a kind of questions, yeah. That's the first. So Pak Wilmar is a transition from presenting and discussion. I think he posed some also comments or question to the previous speakers, and I will give you to each speaker to respond to that. I forgot, do you have question to Tim or just comment?
Yes. The question is, how do people inhabit this in China? Like, if you can share with us what happened after the network is developed.
Yeah, well, of course, China is a very big place, and different regions are very different, different contexts. So there's no single answer to that question. In a lot of cases, people haven't been able to inhabit those spaces to continue. And one of the aspects of infrastructure power in China is and part of the broader urbanization plan is to simply move more of the population out of rural areas, right? To move them into concentrated settlements, for a number of different reasons, having to do with development, having to do with using more land for industry and other things. So there's been a lot of cases where, you know, people are expected to move. They're expected to move to a new place. They're expected to leave their land for development because it's too isolated. It's too, you know, it's not doesn't match with the development plan of the government. So, you know, in many cases that has been the result. In other cases, the region that I've looked at more closely, which is in Southwest China in Guizhou province, where at least up until the pandemic, and I haven't been doing research there since the pandemic, but before the pandemic, I had been doing research there for many years. And in that region, a whole new city has been developed and is growing and is emerging out of what used to be very recently rural areas, rural villages. The issue there is that for some, you have to relocate into a relocation housing area in a nearby area. But the broader issue is that people's livelihoods, which in the past had been based on a clear aspect of kind of settling in place, farming land, essentially, maybe going to market once in a while or something like that, but essentially a more settled existence has transformed into a circulatory existence, right? In which if they don't have their land anymore, they are commuting into the nearby city for work on a more regular basis, or other industrial zones nearby for work. So there's a kind of become a regular pattern of commuting going on. And the infrastructure is, of course, built to facilitate that. And in some ways, people say, well, that's a much better way to kind of improve my life than the previous option, which was to move to the coastal provinces, places like Guangzhou, Shenzhen, where all the factory development for the export development industry was being built. People would move to those places to work in those factories. They would only return to their home once a year during New Year's, during Chinese New Year's, during Spring Festival. Some people call that the largest human migration in history that was going on. It still happens, but it's been diminished because people know there's less reason to go all the way to the coast, right? And now you can find jobs in these city cluster regions, and the infrastructure improvement with high-speed rail and other things has made it possible to one of the planning objectives has been to define each city cluster by a labor market that would require no more than a 1-hour commute each direction, and to build the infrastructure in a way that would allow that to happen. And they've actually been quite successful. So what all this means is that inhabiting those spaces now means moving a lot, right? It means being mobile. It either for commuting for a job, or your job itself is mobile, like ride-hailing jobs and those kinds of things. And so that's what inhabitation now means. It means being moving around. The concept that people talk about on China a lot is for that kind of life is suspension. And it's almost like I think of this in terms of a hydrological metaphor. Suspension is when you have particles suspended in flow. And the objective of development is to maintain that flow and maintain the particles of the people. And as long as they keep in suspension, as long as they keep moving around, the economy continues to grow, capital continues to accumulate. And so part of my interest in habitation and in settlement is also that metaphor of how do things actually settle out of that suspension and flow, right? And are people allowed to do that, right? Is that a possibility in the way that these spaces are shaped? And in China, that is not some. Sorry, the hukou system is still in place. It doesn't mean as much anymore now. Although, well, that's a whole other that's another conversation. But yeah. So anyway, so those questions about how people inhabit and settle in land in place in China have all those kind of issues with them. And so I've also been really curious about what happens in a place like the Jakarta-Bandung corridor, or the potential mega region of the North Java coast, with all the kind of infrastructure development and the agricultural settlements, and how do people kind of hold on to an ability to remain. So I'm really interested in the paper that you have forthcoming, and really look forward to reading that. But I should shut up now and allow other people to speak.
Okay, thank you, Tim. I guess what you presented and discussed is, I think, why it can have a kind of a fundamental and radical way of thinking, at least for many of us are planners. For decades, if not for centuries, we see infrastructure as means to link between places, but with this new emerging concept of settle in meanings that it's not so much means, it's an ends that people have to enjoy during the circulation, right? I mean, yeah, you can correct me, but that's quite a radical shift. And how can planning respond to that? I think that's a great challenge. For the next one is Pak Ibat. I think there is a question from Pak Wilmar about how the more interconnected cities can reshape migration patterns. This is very also meaningful, I think, in the context of Indonesia and especially Java. Just like I'm thinking about like seasonal migration or annual Idul Fitr migration. Yeah, while in China is the New Year, what is called it, the homecoming. Yeah, kind of from homecoming. Will that kind of deep cultural homecoming fading, or what's gonna be happening, I guess, in your exploration?
Yeah, thank you, Wilmar. I think it's futures of our studies, how to see this regional mobilization and how the infrastructure affect the mobility of mega region. But I think one of the concept we could see about the test has been mentioned, we are in between cities, how the ex-urbanization is happened in between Jakarta and Surabaya. Maybe there will be a new Kota Baru Parahyangan in between cities across the north of Java, because the development of industrial development from settlement and also the economic development between these cities, the large scale or the plan rural to urban transformation that been mentioned by Padalik in the previous research is also one of the will be the new pattern that will be developed. But I think I will respond how the planning to adapt or affect this mobility, because the more infrastructure, the more urbanization that been made will be make more problems, that will be made more traffic, that will be made more congestion and so on. And how the people deal with that, how the people adapt. Do they want to mobilize with a huge volume or huge mobilization in weeks and so on? How they choose the days, how they choose to mobilize or not, and how the coalitions between people's private and communities could be made more sustainable in the futures. Because we see in the Padalarang stations, it have issues in traffics about the Kota Baru Parahyangan connected to the high-speed railways, how they manage the problem of traffic and the problem of environment like flood and so on. It's just one of the problems that could be emerged in the mega region scales in the futures, and how the planning could be more adapt, could be more flexible, could be more collaborate between actors, between scales, would be very beneficial in the futures. I think it's my perspective. Thank you, Pak Wilmar.
Okay, I think last Tisa, there is a question about how about the local aspiration, I guess.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Pak Wilmar, for the question. First of all, I would like to tell you about how they feel. So the people feel threatened by the development projects, especially the last one with Karawang. There's a mention about how the locals are moves several times because there are several projects. So they move from one side to the other side, but they now still threatened with the new agenda, new project of toll road. So they will move again to another place. But the question is to move where? They ask us, they tell us about we didn't have more land to move because it's already acquired by the private developer. So that's the realities on the ground, and it's happening. And it's also will be happening in other places, I think. And there's also the situation where they have no choice. Like for example, I mentioned earlier about the 75 hectares of land that still they only have now 5 hectares left, but it's already surrounded by private developers' land, so they have no choice but to sell their land eventually. So that's also happening, and their aspirations is simple. I think they don't have intention to stick with agricultural activities. They want they tend to have I think perspective to change. So they want to change to industrial activities, but they need equipped to be equipped with skills. That's what they ask. They aspirate to from our conversation. So they are willing to change job, but they need to be equipped with the relevant skills in order to move to other jobs or sectors. Yeah, that's what. Thank you.
Okay, now I think we can have an open discussion with the audience. I don't know, MC, do you have a kind of a way of how we can arrange discussion or any ideas? Or we can first ask from the audience here, I guess, as a special privilege. If there's any 1 or 2 questions from the audience in the room. We have many special guests in this room. Okay, please mention your name and affiliation and question or comment.
Okay, yeah, my name is Muhammad Diva Sidik. I am research assistant under the Policy Planning and Development Management Research Group. So from what I have heard from the presentation, it mostly talk about infrastructure, capital, governance, and power as crucial factors in making regional transformation happen. But are there any other elements besides infrastructure, capital, and power that are necessary to ensure successful regional transformation? Because we can see that there are a lot of research that mention that the infrastructure or capital or power that led the regional transformation. And based on your research or your experience, is there any other hidden element that maybe play crucial part for the regional transformation that are not found in other research, or there are some interesting elements that we should study more about in order to make the successful regional transformation? I think that is my question. Thank you. The three of all of the speakers. Yeah.
I'll just say that, I mean, thank you for that question. And you're right that there, I mean, it's a regional transformation, whatever that means, is a large, complicated, multifaceted issue. And it certainly does involve much more than just infrastructure and the other things that we've been talking about. I guess the only thing I would say in response that we've been hearing quite a bit in the past couple of weeks of discussions that we've had with people in the region. And Tessa, you might have other thoughts about this, but people have been telling us over and over again, you know, the one thing that they don't want is, I mean, they want to participate in the development that's happening. They don't want to just be an audience to their own transformation. They want to be involved. They want to be part of. So there needs to be some kind of mechanism beyond what is already there that ensures that they have a voice and that they are participating in the process structural that allows that makes that happen, because it doesn't just happen naturally. And even though local people want to participate, they don't have the means that addresses that specific issue of participation, of being involved in the problem. They've said that to us so clearly in so many ways. And another thing that is really important, I guess, and providing access to training and education, and giving people the resources that they need to be involved in that, so that people want access to better educational opportunities. And again, that's not something that just happens naturally. It's something that requires structural investment and change. So education, call it democratic process, or I don't know what it is, but it's some sort of process that enables that civic level of participation to occur. Those are two things that are also really important. I don't know if you want to add.
Yeah, maybe I want to add some from the self-organization perspective. Some change are regional. If the crisis happen, it could be make a transformation, when it's from disaster or some sort of political crisis or economic crisis and so on. But it could be naturally good or desirable outcomes without a good intervene, without the government intervention or multi-actor collaborations between peoples, between platforms, between networks, between informal forum and so on, that we could make the cities better, we could make the space better, how the people could be collaborate each others to make the dreams, to make they want, to make the aspirations to be heard by the government, to be heard by the other actors, to make a better decision, to make better policies. Yeah, maybe the crisis could be the first triggers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think to add to Pak Ibat and also Tim, in mind to the issue of spatial justice in this kind of regional transformation and urban expansion, and how we witnessing that we are witnessing the groups, and the other groups are also have the negative impact. In this case, is the locals, and that's why Tim's mentioned about the participation is also one of the big factors that would change the direction, I think, because in my publication also talk about the unintended consequences by not involving the local governments and the locals itself. And also, I think I would like to mention about the idea, probably we can also develop the co-production of infrastructure space from this
So, and then so I have two questions actually for three of you. And I have two questions for three of you. So the first question is like the prediction of the maybe 10. Intersection or in this point between Jakarta and Surabaya. And yeah, for team, and if you have any experience or any idea of how are this is this really also happening in China or is it not? So and then in this issue is leads to my naive question maybe, and what should we do or what can we do as a planners or maybe as me as a young people to prevent all of this especially justice issue maybe to prevent all of that. Thank you.
I think to all three presenter, yeah.
Questions. What can we do? The first one is, yeah, the research have been done before. There are in between cities or ex-urbanization that we happen in the between cities like Jakarta and Surabaya. And these ex-urbanizations will be built in the rural areas that will be transformed to the like some kind of units or and so on. It will be happening in the development, the infrastructure development, and also the settlement and maybe the new towns. So the new town will be made more congestions, like you said, or more problems, environmental and spatial, socio-economic injustice, and so on. Yeah, one of the tools that we could make is made a digital monitoring on some kind of, I could mention like a real-time feedback loop that could be by spatial sensing or flow tracking or kind of like strategy tuning to make a better decisions by the monitoring and platform that we made to analyze the real-time traffic, the real-time problem in transport, the real-time problem in flood, in crisis, in other crises to make a better decisions and make more collaboration, multi-actor platforms between the private and the community, the locals and regionals and nationals to address one of the most bigger problems in the mega region that triggers the most undesirable way or undesirable patterns that emerge in the scales. So the combinations between the better data and the more collaboration and make flexible regulations, it could be make a better emergence in the futures. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Dika. So actually forget the second question, but the first question is about the prediction in the future. So I've already mentioned about the how mega region might shape from the current trend, but that's for the business of usual perspective. But if you look at the current development on the technology and AI and other things that could be also change the direction and also move towards the new geographies of urbanization as well. For example, for Walini as the new innovation and research center, that's probably also changing the direction of urbanization in Java. That's probably what I want to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Dika, for that question. I mean, that's the perennial question that we always ask ourselves. First of all, spatial justice issues in China, of course, are always ongoing. That's no different from any other place, I suppose. Although I mean, in some ways, China has unique spatial justice issues that derive from the nature of state power and the way it's expressed. And I won't go into that in too much detail, but I will say that, and I'm not going to make any predictions about the future, but I will say that the way change in China has occurred, everybody, I don't know, people are aware of the spatial injustices that accompany rapid transformation and rapid development. People in China are aware of it on many different levels and in many different ways. And the response to that also comes in many different ways. But it's, and even people at the higher levels of state power are actually quite aware of the injustices that happen on an everyday basis as a result of mega projects, as a result of these projects. It's not as if they just say, oh, you know, I mean, I suppose there's a few who do this, but most leaders are sensitive enough to the issues going on the ground that they're aware that people often suffer from as a result of these projects. They continue because they firmly believe that the outcome will justify that suffering, the benefits to society on a larger scale outweigh the sufferings of a few. And there's a lot of people who are experiencing those problems who agree with that, actually. You know, who say, yeah, things are really bad for me, but this is what I do for China. There's a lot of people who say that. It's astounding to me. And yet they believe it. So just, you know, I think what we can do, so I'm not going to say anything about the future, but what I will say is that one thing that we can do, and one thing that people do appreciate, is to say, yeah, I'm willing to kind of sacrifice for the good of the nation, but I also want people to know that that's what happened. And that's often something that doesn't happen in China. So one thing that we can do is shine a light on that and make it clear that this is part of the record. This is part of history. This is what happened. This is what happened to people when these mega projects are developed. There is a tremendous amount of suffering that occurs. There's a tremendous amount of injustice that occurs. We can't change that necessarily, but we can at least record it. We can say this happened. And we can, and as for me, I mean, I use this in my teaching. I use this in my writing, that, you know, shining the light on that to make it clear that this is what happens in our world. And I think that's the most that we can do, or at least the most I can do. You folks here at ITB maybe have a more direct way of influencing planning, of influencing governance that I don't. And of course, you should take that into account as well. But just, you know, making it part of the record, I think is an honorable thing for us to do and something we should do.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. So now we will open discussion for the audience online. Can any of us help? How can we see the comments or the questions that are popping on the screen here? I guess we can.
Padlik, excuse me, Pak.
Yeah.
Actually, I have to go to thesis defense.
Oh yeah.
Is it okay if I leave earlier than other presenter?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think Butesa and Pak Wilmar. No, you still have time. Or you the same panel? Okay. Okay. I think we will still have one question. You can Butesa, you can leave for now to really release the students' tension. in the defense. Okay, we have at least one or two questions I guess to be discussed. First question is from Fabio Esaputra. He said that the discussion so far has focused on precedents in Java. How can we shift the focus toward infrastructure development, connectivity, and economic corridors in other regions such as Sumatra? This is particularly crucial given that Sumatra is projected to experience highly progressive growth in the coming years. Furthermore, what is the role of local governments in providing insights and inputs regarding regional potentials, especially concerning inter-regional connectivity policies amidst the increasingly centralized nature of governance and decision-making in the recent years? So yeah, I think you can make a division of labor here. Okay. So the burden is in yours because you are from Sumatra as well.
Okay. Try to answer the questions because yeah, I do research in also in Sumatra how the connectivity, the toll road that be developed in Sumatra. I agree that in the coming years maybe the new corridors will be in the next corridors in the Sumatra region, like Aceh to Lampung and across the cities, maybe the new mega region in the next 20 or 30 years and so on. Because yeah, I agree that we could rely on just one economic centers like China have Shenzhen, Shanghai, and a lot of some of kind of mega region, not just rely on Beijing. And so in Indonesia, we have to develop more economic centers, more regions to make balance, to make a sustainable growth in the futures. And yeah, in Sumatra, we have the same issues, how the local governments, how the local people is not involved in the mega project, is not involved in some national project and so on. So the multiplier effect, the connections between the large project and the locals is so small. So some impact is shown some positive way, but there's also a lot of negative ways. Some shop is closed, some restaurant is closed, and there's some economic is down. But in the main cities like Lampung and Palembang, the Bandar Lampung cities have a lot of visitors, tourists from Palembang, and the Palembangs also have a lot of visitors to come to Palembang. But in the locals, there are a lot of decreases. And I want to respond that yes, Sumatra have also the need for collaborations between regions, especially the Lampung have a lot of people, the different entities from Java, from Sundanese, from Medan, Palembang, and so on. And I think the collaborations between people, actors should be make better cities in the futures. And the last is, yeah, I think the government should see more the potentials of the Sumatra and make more development and make more potentials there because I think some crisis will be seen in the futures like flood and then also some wildfire and some cases that we will be see soon in the futures, near futures. And the government should make more engagement in the people, especially in locals. Maybe that's my perspective. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, we are running out of time. Unless if there is one question relevant for Tim or Pak Wilmar, I would like to see. But if it's not, atau ada lagi? Itu udah terakhir ya? Yeah, it's to Tim, sorry. Because Tim is all the way come here very far. I guess you need to answer more questions. To Professor Tim from Lala, thank you for the very interesting topic. I capture your concern regarding the need for a new lexicon to describe the process of territorial infrastructuring. This definitely have serious discourse on space as container versus space as relational. It's very long questions. Can you read it? Okay. So your research reminds me of the mobilities paradigm introduced by Mimi Scheller and John Urey in the early 2000s, which criticized static space as container instead of focus on flows, connectivity, and mobility. In space of flow that is inherently driven by mobility, well, as far as I understand, it's outer space shaped by multiple flows. How do you see the intersection between mobilities and this Earth to settle within your research?
That's a great question. And the answer, of course, would be very long to do the question justice. So I won't be able to do that in the limited time that we have. I really appreciate you bringing up the mobilities paradigm. I think I am approaching this question from kind of the flip side of the mobilities paradigm. I mean, the mobilities paradigm came about at a time when Urey and Scheller felt that, at least if not in geography, then in the discipline of sociology and in social theory writ large, the given assumption, the norm was that people are settled in place, and that moving between place or out of place is treated as an aberration or an exceptional situation from that norm of settlement. And they said, how about we flip that on its head and say, being mobile is more of a norm than and start to think about the social construction of mobility in those terms. And that of course was an incredibly productive move that they made that allowed people, and it was a necessary move at the time when the new mobilities paradigm was coming about. I think in the intervening quarter century that we've seen since the mobilities paradigm emerged, an increasing focus on flow and increasing focus on, I mean, the whole infrastructural turn, I think, which comes on the heels of the mobility turn, starts to almost fetishize movement and mobility and flow in a way that I think required, and from my perspective, then some counter pushback that I think 25 years later, we need to return maybe to that flip that the mobility studies paradigm did, and flip it once again and say, with all of the normalizing of mobility that you now have with infrastructure-led development, with infrastructure-led urbanization, with the idea that it's all about circulation, treating people as if they're the same as data and capital. The more you circulate, the more you flow, the more value there is, the more development that you have. As that becomes increasingly the norm, I think we need to revisit the ideas of place and of settlement and of being immobile. And can we rethink that's why I turn back to Lefebvre and say, can we rethink the right to the city as a right to settle in a space that is being designed for mobility? So yeah, it's a great question to kind of think about how these concepts develop historically out of particular moments of capitalism. If you're a materialist and you want to approach intellectual trends from that perspective, I think we've reached a point where the critical move is then to question the normalization of mobility that has become so pervasive. Thanks. That's a great question.
Thank you. As the last question is the hardest one and very productive. And I think we have to close the session, and I want to return the stage to the MC, please.
Thank you very much, Professor Derek Nurdala, Professor Dr. Ibad. You may go back to your seat. Okay. Distinguished guests, speaker, and participants, we have now reached the conclusion of today's webinar. On behalf of the Regional and Rural Planning Research Group and the School of Architecture, Planning, and Policy Development of ITB, I will extend our gratitude to our esteemed speakers, Professor Timothy Oaks, Dr. Muhammad Zainal Ibad, and Dr. Tessa Talita for their valuable and thought-provoking presentations. We are equally grateful for our moderator, Professor Deli Kudala, and our discussion, Dr. Wilmar Salim, for their expertise and guidance throughout today's session. To express our high appreciation for the speakers, we would like to give certificate for each of the speaker. Each of the certificate will be handed by Professor Deli Kudala. Professor Delik, please enter the stage. For the first one, we would like to give the certificate to Professor Tim Oaks. Okay, the next one, Dr. Ibad, please enter the stage. Okay, because Dr. Tessa is already leave the room, we're gonna give it for the next session. And we also extend our heartfelt thanks for all the participants, both in person and in Zoom meeting. We trust that today's discussion on infrastructure, mega projects, urban corridors, and regional transformation will contribute meaningfully to ongoing research, policy dialogue, and planning practice. This concludes the SAPPK webinar of 2026. And this is the additional information regarding our next webinar. We will have the next webinar that will be held at 25th. Yeah, in 25th of June. This concludes the webinar for today. We wish you all the pleasant afternoon and we look forward for your continued participation in our future events. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.